The Wicked Will Rise, Chapter 13. She's getting more powerful, Pete said. We were sitting in the grass in the field, next to Glinda's tent, chowing down on scrambled eggs and bacon, with the likelihood that she could hear everything that we said in the tent. It seemed safer to eat outside, so we were having a nice little picnic while everything else went to hell. Who? I asked. Glinda? She was pretty powerful to start with. I didn't notice anything different today. Not Glinda, Pete said grimly. Her. Ozma. I paused. What good is all the magic prowess in the world if you can't, or won't, actually use it? So far I hadn't seen much evidence at all of Ozma's so-called power, but from the expression on Pete's face I could see that whatever he was talking about, he wasn't happy. What do you mean? I asked. Pete scarfed his last piece of bacon and set his plate aside in the grass. As soon as he did, it disappeared in a poof of glitter. I mean that, I'm not going to be able to stick around much longer, he said. He stood and stared wistfully off at the mountain range in the distance. It used to be that when I took the wheel from Ozma, I had a good 6 hours at least, sometimes even longer, before she came back out. I never quite knew why it sometimes lasted longer than other times, but I think it had something to do with Dorothy. She never knew about me, but for some reason when she was distracted or not nearby, it made things easier. But now Dorothy's gone and Ozma seems stronger than ever. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I didn't say it, but it actually made some sense to me. If Oz was getting stronger since the witches had broken down the pipelines that were sucking the magic from the land, it stood to reason that Ozma would be getting stronger too. That would explain why, lately, had also seemed more present. I wish we didn't have to worry about her, I said, trying to lighten the mood. You're not much of a pain in the ass as she is. Plus, you come in handy in a fight. Ozma just kind of stands there, you know? What I didn't mention was that it probably was for the best if Ozma came popping back in soon. In fact, if she didn't, I would probably have to make it happen myself, like it or not. It was Ozma, not Pete, who was supposedly locked in on the scent that Mombi had given her and was going to take me to Polychrome. It was Ozma who I needed, not him. But this was nice. I could wait a few minutes. Do you think Glinda was right? Pete asked. That the Order wants to restore Ozma to her real self? I can see why they would, I guess. She's the queen. Putting her back in power is a step toward getting rid of Dorothy. But what happens to me when Ozma gets better? Does that mean I'll be trapped in here for good, like I was before Dorothy came back? What if this time I stop existing? No, I blurted. It's Glinda, remember? You can't trust a word she says. She's just trying to get into your head. She wants you to go running to her so she can send you straight back to Dorothy. I guess, he said, but he sounded doubtful. But how do you know for sure? Because she lies, I said. That's what she does. As I said it, I found myself wondering if I was really being honest. With Pete, with myself. I mean, yeah, I knew I was right about Glinda. She was a nasty, manipulative piece of work, willing to play on any insecurity you could think of to wore her away on. On the other hand, that didn't always mean she was lying, and until this moment, I hadn't considered any of the questions Pete was asking. It was hard not to wonder if there was something to what he was saying. You will be fine, I reassured him, trying not to feel guilty about it. You won't let them do that, though, right? You'll watch out for me? Pete searched me as if he could sense every one of my doubts. Of course, I said. I wanted to mean it. Look, I know Glinda's a liar, Pete said. But part of what she said was true, you know, about what a waste it is and how much it sucks. I've already missed out on so much. You have no idea how good you have it. Oh, sure, I said. I'm really lucky. Just look at me. Living the good life here. There was a slight warm breeze, and it ruffled Pete's hair. He gave me a wistful frown with a million responses wrapped in it. Among them, girl, please, and you really have no clue. I never stop appreciating it, he said, tilting his chin into the sun and closing his eyes to soak it in. Just being able to stand outside like this and breathe the air. You should remember it, too. Think of all the things you've already gotten to do. All the things you still get to do. Okay, so maybe things still could be better. But you have this life that's just sitting there, wishing for you to take it. It could be worse. I realized too late how selfish I must seem. You're right, I said, standing up. I'm sorry. As I placed my own dish aside and watched it disappear like his, it occurred to me to wonder where it disappeared to. Had it gone off into some magical dishwashing dimension to be cleaned, or had it just ceased to exist? The more I learned about magic, the more questions I had about it, but for now I put them out of my head. I took Pete's hand. We both just stood there, looking out at everything Oz had to offer. For all the evil that was part of this place, there was so much that was good about it, too. Despite everything, Oz was a place of light and magic, and we had found our way to the center of it. I don't know where the next thing came from. I guess it was just something about the wildflowers all around us in the meadow, and the mountains off in the distance. The breeze, the sun, the unexpected, unreasonable feeling that everything was going to be okay. Maybe it's what Pete said about appreciating everything you had in the moment that you had it. Or maybe it was the fact that I had no idea where the future was going to lead. What was I waiting for anymore? Why would I ever waited for anything? Okay, so maybe I was just wired from the first caffeine I'd had in months. Whatever it was, I was just kind of like, oh, screw it. So I kissed him. Because why not? Pete's skin smelled like sandalwood and soap. His lips were soft, his eyes widened in surprise as he pulled away. My cheeks began to flush. Crap. I'm sorry, I said, backing away in embarrassment. No, it's fine, he said. It's just... Out of nowhere, he started laughing. I just thought... I stuttered. I guess I just thought, since you said you'd never... Amy, he said. He collapsed back into the grass and pushed his hair from his face with a manic and astonished grin, like he sort of couldn't believe it. When he laughed again, I started to feel a little insulted. Well, I didn't think it was that ridiculous, I said. He just laughed harder. No, it's not that. It would be totally nice to kiss someone. It would be nice to kiss you if things were different, but I didn't want to kiss someone just to kiss them, I'm probably not going to get many chances. See, it's like when I do it, I want to make it count. I guess I just thought you knew. Wait, I said. Knew what? Listen, I get you. You're trouble. If I were into girls, I'd be so into you, but I'm not. Even girls as awesome as you. You mean... I'm pretty sure gears were visibly turning in my head. Pete shrugged. I guess, he said. I don't know. But basically. Oh, I said. Okay, so I was kind of dumbstruck. The idea that Pete was gay just wasn't something I'd ever considered as a possibility. I didn't know why I thought you knew. It's not like I told you or anything. There's no reason you should have known. I didn't really ever thought about it one way or the other, but as soon as he'd said it, it made perfect sense. As handsome as he was, and as much time as we'd spent together, there had always been something missing. A distance between us that had always been hard to pin down, but I knew what it was. And even if I wasn't, he said, would it matter? I kind of get the feeling that you're into someone else anyway, so it's probably just as well, right? I guess, I said. Just do me a favor, okay? Sure, he said. What? When you're in there, keep an eye on me. When you can see me, I mean. He tilted his head and his hair fell on his face. What do you mean? I paused, not wanting to admit what I was really afraid of. If you think I'm about to do something, scary, if you're in there somewhere and you see me not being myself, try to give me a signal or stop me or whatever. Pete nodded understanding. Fine, he said. If I can, I will. But you have to look out for me too. Don't let them do anything to me. I promise, I said. I hoped it was a promise I would actually be able to keep. I had a bunch more stuff I wanted to ask him, but it was just too late. Pete's body began to shudder. He winced in pain and jerked his head back. He swallowed hard. Told you, he said. She wants control again. Here I go. Hopefully I'll see you again. We'll have plenty to talk about, but I don't know. I'm sure it's going to be as easy after this. She's different now. She's going to fight hard from now on, I can tell. As if on cue, his face began to change. It was like the two of them were wrestling each other to occupy the exact same square foot of space. Pete's skin rippled as the princess struggled to get out. His arms and legs began lengthening and contracting. His face was flipping back and forth between his own and Ozma's, and something in between. Pete screamed. He clutched his head. Then he was gone, and Ozma was standing in his place looking steely and hard. She gave me the once-over, cocked her head, and raised an eyebrow. Her lips pursed. It was kind of intimidating. Was she mad at me? Did she blame me for bringing Pete out again? It didn't matter. As nice a rest as the last hour had been, it was time to go. I wasn't sure exactly how I was supposed to pack up the tent, but it turned out I didn't need to worry about it. As soon as I decided it was time to get moving, the tent seemed to understand. It collapsed in on itself like I had issued a command out loud, and folded itself back into a small, neat square of cloth that I placed in my back pocket. I knew that it was dangerous to use again, but I couldn't quite bring myself to leave it behind. Ozma turned in a circle, gathering her bearings. Then she began to walk. If nothing else, she certainly was single-minded. That spider spell really worked. She moved carefully and deliberately but slowly. For every few steps she took, she backed up a few times and then changed direction. Finally, when she found a spot in the meadow a few paces from where we'd started, she stopped, paced around as if judging it, and knelt to the ground as I looked on from a respectful distance. On her knees, the princess ran her hands carefully through the grass, letting her fingertips graze each blade. Next, she turned her attention to the flowers and began to examine them. I moved in closer, trying to see exactly what she was doing. All the flowers I'd seen in the field were one shade of purple or another, but as Ozma searched, she managed to find an assortment, which she began to pluck up as she settled on the one she wanted. First, a tiny red one, then an odd royal blue flower with thin, spiraling petals, and a purple crocus and a yellow buttercup until finally she was holding a tiny bouquet representing the 4 colors of Oz. She rose, holding the flowers to her chest, and, with her other hand, licked her index finger and held it up. She turned clockwise, then counterclockwise, gauging the wind, and then stopped. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck as a gust came from behind me out of nowhere, and the wind blew around us. Ozma tossed the flowers into the air and watched as the current caught them up and carried them flying into the distance. Ozma was still. A second later, a brick appeared in the grass at her feet. Then another, and another, each one of them blooming in front of her like flowers in a time-lapse video. They popped up slowly and then quickly, and while they appeared scattered at first, a pattern began to emerge. It was a road, and it was yellow. Ozma stepped into the path and began the next part of the journey. "Follow," Ozma said. So I followed. Not Ozma, but the road itself. Now the princess and I walked together side by side, in a looping, meandering path that I knew was taking us to the mountains.